Hey there, CMA students, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zooming in on a really high-stakes focus for your certification journey, mastering the exact distinction between goals and objectives. If you want to ace your exam, locking down these definitions is absolutely non-negotiable, so let's dive right in. Now, it sounds pretty simple, right? Goals, objectives. But here's the thing. Conflating these two terms is a massive, and I mean massive, trap. In everyday conversation, we use them like they mean the exact same thing. But on test day, treating them as synonyms will definitely cost you points. The CMA exam tests your precision as a strategic thinker, and that precision really starts with your vocabulary. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at the common exam trap, define organizational goals, and then define strategic objectives. After that, we'll put them head-to-head, break down the traits of effective objectives, and finish up with a quick exam review. Section 1. The common exam trap. Look, assuming goals and objectives are just interchangeable synonyms is a classic mistake. They actually play completely different roles in an organization's strategic vision. Moving right along to Section 2, defining organizational goals. Let's look at the strict textbook definition that you absolutely need to memorize. So well-construed goals denote exactly what an organization hopes to accomplish in a future period of time. You can kind of think of them as the ultimate future state, literally the outcome of the effort you're putting in right now. And the set of goals an organization creates addresses a really wide range of things, both financial and non-financial issues. But here is the exact phrase you've got to lock into your brain for the exam. Goals are closed-ended attributes. They are precise, and they are expressed in specific terms. Remember that, closed-ended. Okay, Section 3, defining strategic objectives. Now let's see how these act as the concrete, day-to-day basis for an organization's functioning. Objectives literally form the basis of how an organization functions. Why? Because setting strategic objectives is what translates a firm's broad vision into specific performance targets. They're super important. They define the organization's relationship with its environment, they help pursue the vision and mission, and they provide the ultimate basis for strategic decision-making and performance appraisal. But here's the key distinction. Objectives are defined as the ends that state specifically how those goals shall be achieved. They are incredibly concrete, much more specific than goals, and, get this, they are open-ended attributes. Open-ended. That's a huge point. Which brings us to Section 4, goals versus objectives. Let's set up a direct showdown between these two concepts. We really need to build strict mental boundaries here for test day. All right, here is the counterintuitive difference that examiners absolutely love to test. Naturally, you might assume a broad goal is open-ended and a specific objective is closed-ended, right? Well, scratch that. You need to flip that assumption entirely. Goals are closed-ended attributes. They are those precise future hopes. Objectives, on the other hand, while much more concrete in stating exactly how to get there, are defined as open-ended attributes. Memorize this flip, guys. Goals are closed-ended, objectives are open-ended. Moving on to Section 5, traits of effective objectives. In order to actually be effective, objectives need to possess certain desirable characteristics. There are 6 of them, and this framework is highly testable. Trait number 1, specific. First things first, you have to specify exactly what the company wants to achieve. This means answering 5 distinct questions. What does the organization want to achieve? Why did it want it? Who is involved in the process? Where is it happening? And finally, which resources and constraints need to be identified? Nailing these specifics down is exactly what makes objectives likely to lead and motivate your managers. Next up, trait 2, understandable. Objectives have to be crystal clear to the actual people who are expected to achieve them. It makes sense, right? Clarity helps to avoid ambiguity, which in turn is totally essential to actually achieving the desired results. If your team doesn't understand the target, there's no way they can hit it. Third, they must be measurable. Objectives need to be precise, and there has to be a standard against which managers can judge their performance. In fact, it's often considered best practice to quantify objectives rather than just throwing around vague qualitative terms. Putting a number on it helps you measure and control your achievements, especially when you're comparing performance against comparable companies in your industry, or even just in general. Trait number 4, attainable. Objectives must be challenging, yes, but they also have to be realistic. It's kind of like a Goldilocks situation. They give all employees an incentive to look for ways of improving operations. But if an objective poses an unrealistic challenge, employees might just throw their hands up and give up. On the flip side, an objective that's way too easy, that's going to fail to motivate managers and staff altogether. It has to be just right. The fifth trait is relevant. Objectives absolutely must be tightly linked to the overall vision and mission of the organization. Basically, there shouldn't be any conflict between the objectives management sets and the overarching goals of the company. This is a really important task. Any misalignment between the two can easily lead to a total failure in achieving the corporate vision. Everyone has to be rowing in the same direction. And finally, trait 6, time-bound. Objectives should specify a time period. Putting time constraints on things tells employees that success means hitting the target by a given date, and not after that date. Deadlines inject a real sense of urgency and act as a powerful motivator. Now keep in mind one quick caveat for the exam. Not all objectives require time constraints, but it is a highly desirable trait. All right, let's wrap things up with Section 6, Final Exam Review. Let's permanently cement these concepts so you're totally ready for test day. Here is your ultimate cheat sheet. Remember the strict dividing lines we talked about? Goals? Those are precise, closed-ended future states that represent the outcome of your effort. Objectives? They form the basis of your functioning. They are the concrete, much more specific, open-ended ends that state exactly how those goals will be achieved. And don't forget the 6 core traits for effective objectives: specific, understandable, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative mock exam prompt. If an exam question asks you to identify the open-ended, concrete ends stating how a future state is achieved, what are you going to choose? Well, you now know without a doubt not to fall into the trap. You're going to confidently select objectives. Keep these definitions sharp, trust your preparation, and you're going to do absolutely great. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer.
So today, we're doing a hyper-focused crash course. We're going to master the 6 critical issues of setting organizational objectives. We've taken the core material and translated it into a highly visual, structured format so you can literally lock it into your memory for exam day. Let's do this.
So here's your definitive exam checklist. We're breaking down the 6 pillars of setting objectives: specificity, multiplicity, periodicity, verifiability, reality, and quality. We're going to make sure you can easily pull these right out of your brain under pressure. All right, starting off with our first grouping, scope and scale, which covers specificity and multiplicity.
So let's talk about specificity. This is all about the organizational level for which a set of objectives has actually been stated. Because, objectives don't just exist in a vacuum, they sit on a spectrum. At one extreme, you've got these really broadly stated goals, the 30,000-foot view. And at the exact opposite extreme, those broad goals are translated into highly specific, localized performance targets.
To sort out this whole issue of specificity, organizations do something pretty clever. They state specificity at different levels by prefixing terms to the objectives. So you'll see labels like corporate objectives, general objectives, or particular objectives. And the reason they do this? It's highly practical. Defining that level ensures the objectives actually serve the exact needs of performance evaluation at that specific tier of the company. It just keeps everyone on the exact same page. And that actually brings us perfectly to our second issue, multiplicity. Look, it is incredibly rare for any organization to work on just a single objective or even just a few. Since companies are complex and juggle a massive number of diverse functional areas, finding a realistic balance in your objectives is basically mandatory.
So, multiplicity is essentially taking into account both the number and the types of objectives being set. You've got to formulate enough of them to cover all those diverse aspects of the organization's functioning. But, and this is a big but, neither too few nor too many are considered realistic. It's really all about finding that Goldilocks zone of functional coverage.
Moving right along to our next pairing, time and proof. Let's look at periodicity and verifiability.
For periodicity, the main thing to remember is that objectives are set across different timeframes. Organizations normally determine long-term, medium-term, and short-term objectives. Now, the key takeaway here is that long-term objectives tend to be pretty general in nature simply because future outcomes are, well, a lot less certain. On the flip side, short-term objectives are much more specific and comprehensive because you're dealing with a much higher level of certainty. And crucially, for the exam, remember that all these different timeframes need to be integrated with each other to actually achieve the desired results.
Okay, so the crucial point for our fourth issue, verifiability, revolves entirely around answering one single definitive question. Has this objective been met? That's it. If you can't verify an objective, it's virtually useless for performance evaluation. Now, verifiability is super tightly linked to quantification. The most definite, foolproof way to measure an objective is just to quantify it with numbers. But we all know not everything can be quantified, right? In those cases, qualitative objectives are set. But how on earth do you verify qualitative objectives? Well, the source text notes that these require value judgments, specifically from experts both inside and outside the organization.
All right, let's jump into our final exam pairing, truth and standard, breaking down reality and quality.
The issue of reality highlights a pretty fascinating dynamic. Organizations very often have two entirely different sets of objectives, and you absolutely need to distinguish between them. On one side, you have official objectives. These are the goals the organization publicly professes to attain. But on the other side, you have operative objectives, and these are what the organization actually seeks to attain in reality.
The source text actually gives a perfect example for this reality check. Let's say a company claims that developing human resources is an objective. Okay, that's an official objective. Sounds fantastic on paper, right? But to determine if it's actually an operative objective, that depends entirely on the amount of resource allocation that's been made towards it. Basically, if there's no budget for training, it's just official, not operative. Money and resources dictate the reality.
Finally, we hit our sixth issue, quality. The quality of an objective is determined by its capability to do two very specific things. It needs to provide a specific direction, and it needs to provide a tangible basis for evaluating performance. If an objective doesn't direct action and you can't evaluate it, it's just a poor quality objective.
When you get hit with a question on this during the CMA exam, remember this exact contrast. Stating your objective is to increase revenue is considered a bad objective. Why? Because it completely lacks the element of measurability. But if you rephrase that exact same desire to increase revenue by 30% in the next 6 months and thereafter increase it by 40% maintainable for the next 2 years, now that is considered a good objective. It's got specific direction, a timeline, and a highly tangible baseline for evaluation.
Okay, let's move to our final section, final exam takeaways. Let's lock this in. Definitely keep this 6-point mental cheat sheet ready to go. Scope and scale gives us specificity and multiplicity. Time and proof gives us periodicity and verifiability. And truth and standard gives us reality and quality. If you understand these definitions and the contrast within them, like official versus operative or long-term uncertainty versus short-term certainty, you are going to absolutely crush these questions.
I want to leave you with a quick thought to apply right now. As you prep for your upcoming CMA test, think about that concept of reality we just talked about. Ask yourself, are you just professing to study, making it an official objective to pass? Are you actually allocating the necessary time, energy, and resources to make passing your exam a true operative reality?
We are digging into a massive, incredibly relevant case study today that comes up time and time again when we talk about strategic management. We're going to look at the exact mechanics of how a company scales, disrupts an entire industry, and perfectly aligns its long-term vision with its day-to-day execution. Okay, let's dive into this, because if you want to ace your exam, you need to deeply understand the strategic frameworks at play here, not just the flashy headlines.
Picture this scenario. It's 2017. And you have General Motors, an absolute legacy giant, pumping out around 10 million vehicles a year. And then you have Tesla, a relatively small California startup, yet somehow this startup managed to achieve a market valuation that entirely eclipsed GM. How does that happen? How on earth does a company with a fraction of the manufacturing volume convince the market that it's worth more than the biggest player in the room?
Well, the answer lies in numbers like this: 1,400%. That is the massive appreciation of Tesla's market capitalization over its 2010 initial public offering price, hitting over $60 billion by 2017. That sheer magnitude of success wasn't an accident, and it certainly wasn't just luck. It was the result of a highly calculated, meticulously sequenced strategy. To understand this for your exam, we need to break down exactly how they engineered this explosive growth.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The Tesla phenomenon. 2. Vision versus mission. 3. The 4-step master plan. 4. The competitive challenge. And 5. The exam key takeaways.
Section 2. Vision versus mission. This is a crucial distinction for your exam, and honestly, a very common trap you'll want to avoid.
Let's start with a vision. A vision statement is your ultimate aspirational destination. When founded, Tesla's core vision was to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable transport.
It represents the ultimate why of the company, setting a massive, long-term goal that dictates every other operational and strategic decision they make down the line.
Now contrast that with their mission. The mission represents the immediate practical execution. It's the how. How exactly are they going to reach that sustainable transport destination? By building zero-emission electric vehicles that are attractive and affordable. It's very grounded. It tells you the specific product they're making and the exact value proposition they're bringing to the market today.
Section 3. The 4-step master plan. Elon Musk's blueprint. Now, what's really interesting about this is how deceptively simple it looks on paper.
Here is the master plan that basically drove that $60 billion valuation. Step 1, build a sports car. Step 2, use that money to build an affordable car. Step 3, use that money to build an even more affordable car. And Step 4, while doing all the above, also provide zero-emission electric power generation options. It's a textbook, brilliant example of a phased scaling strategy.
Let's look at how they actually executed that timeline. In 2008, we get Step 1, the Roadster, a $110,000 sports car with faster acceleration than a Porsche or a Ferrari. In 2012, they hit Step 2 with the Model S sedan, starting at $73,500. This appealed to a larger market, allowing for bigger production runs to drive down unit costs, and it was a massive hit, winning 2013 Motor Trend Car of the Year and snagging a near-perfect 99 out of 100 from Consumer Reports. They also introduced the Model X crossover for $100,000, though technical difficulties with those futuristic Falcon Wing doors delayed it to 2015. But overcoming all that friction, they hit Step 3 in 2017 with the Model 3, starting at just $35,000. Notice how the price drops at each core phase as production scales up.
The contrast between the beginning and the end of that plan is staggering. The Roadster was really just a prototype to prove that electric vehicles could be more than mere golf carts. They only sold about 2,500 of them before stopping production. But the Model 3? That was designed for mass market appeal, and they received over 500,000 pre-orders. Think about the financial impact of that. That customer enthusiasm basically amounted to $500 million in interest-free loans for Tesla before the cars were even delivered. That is a massive strategic shift from a low-volume proof of concept to total mass market domination.
And what about Step 4 of the master plan? Power generation. To pull this off, Tesla acquired solar energy company SolarCity in the fall of 2016 for more than $2 billion. This single move totally transformed Tesla from just a car manufacturer into the world's first fully integrated clean tech energy company, perfectly combining solar power, power storage, and transportation all under one roof.
And this brilliantly illustrates the enormous operational ramp-up required to support a disruptive market strategy. To achieve this scale, Tesla had to set incredibly aggressive production goals. Out of the Fremont, California factory that they purchased from Toyota, they set a target to sell 500,000 total vehicles by the end of 2018. To accomplish this ambitious leap, Elon Musk promised that Tesla would increase its annual production from just 50,000 vehicles in 2015 to a staggering 1 million vehicles a year by 2020. That is a monumental strategic commitment.
Because beyond simply achieving a competitive advantage for his company, Musk's ultimate goal is to set an entirely new standard in automotive technology. He hopes that zero-emission electric vehicles will one day completely replace gasoline-powered cars. They aren't just trying to win market share, they are trying to fundamentally change the rules of the entire transportation industry.
Section 4. The Competitive Challenge. Accurately identifying these barriers to entry is absolutely essential for high marks on the exam. Tesla's challenges are immense. First, they must manufacture attractive and affordable vehicles using totally new technology to compete directly with entrenched traditional gas-powered cars. Second, they have to literally build the infrastructure that their product relies on, a vast network of charging stations. And third, they must overcome a major psychological barrier, consumer range anxiety. Gas stations are pretty much on any corner in a city. EV charging stations aren't. Plus, many mass-market EVs historically couldn't drive as far on one charge as a gasoline car with a full tank. Overcoming that daily consumer friction is a massive, massive hurdle. Section 5. Exam Key Takeaways. Distilling the case for test day. So the crucial point is how you bring all these concepts together.
If you get a question on this case, organize your answer exactly like this. Start with the vision, the transition to sustainable transport. Then the mission, the practical goal of building attractive, affordable EVs. Detail the strategy, that brilliant 4-step master plan in scaling annual production from 50,000 to 1 million vehicles. Finally, outline the challenge, the infrastructure gaps, range anxiety, and competing with legacy gas vehicles. Structuring your essay with this clear framework demonstrates total strategic comprehension to the grader. This quote, right from the case text, serves as the ultimate thesis of Tesla's ongoing battle. To succeed, it must manufacture attractive and affordable vehicles using its new technology, which will compete with traditional cars running on gasoline. Literally everything we've discussed today, the phased rollout, the aggressive production targets, the Solar City acquisition, it all exists to solve that one single sentence.
The Tesla mission. The burning question here is, what exactly is Tesla trying to achieve beyond just selling us electric vehicles? When they first launched, their stated mission was incredibly ambitious: to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable transport. They didn't just want to build cool cars, right? They wanted to build a bridge to a totally zero-emission future, replacing gas guzzlers completely and setting a brand new standard in automotive tech. But as you can imagine, a mission that massive requires some serious financial backing right out of the gate, like equipping a California factory with cutting-edge robotics. To actually make this global transition happen, Tesla relies heavily on something called strategic commitments. Now, in business terms, these are massive investments that are super costly, completely long-term, and really, really difficult to reverse once you've started. We're talking about pouring billions of dollars into that California car factory and a massive Nevada battery gigafactory. Tesla is basically betting the house here to translate its vision into reality, aiming to provide affordable, best-in-class, zero-emission mass-market cars. Moving right along to Part 2, addressing competitive challenges. This really brilliantly illustrates Elon Musk's original four-step master plan. It was basically a chronological roadmap designed to fund and scale their operations over time. Step 1, build a high-priced sports car, the Roadster, just to prove EVs weren't just glorified golf carts. Step 2, use that money to build the Model S, a slightly more affordable family car. Step 3, take those profits and build the Model 3, an even more affordable car for the masses. And finally, Step 4, provide zero-emission power generation options. It's this genius, cascading strategy of scale. Now, actually executing that strategy for a mass-market car like the Model 3, that requires scale on a whole different level. And nothing highlights this better than their staggering $5 billion investment in the Nevada Gigafactory, built alongside Panasonic. The crucial takeaway here is that batteries are literally the most critical component for electric vehicles. If you want a cost-competitive car, you absolutely have to lock down the battery supply. So by partnering with Panasonic, a total world leader in battery tech, and dropping $5 billion on this plant, plus another $2 billion on a new manufacturing facility, Tesla directly tackled their biggest competitive challenge. Okay, Section 3, an evolving vision. So as that master plan unfolded, the company actually had to pivot how it viewed itself. By completing Step 4 in acquiring Solar City, which was a massive move, they evolved from just a car manufacturer into a fully integrated clean tech energy company. They even officially changed their name in 2017 from Tesla Motors to simply Tesla Inc. Their mission fundamentally upgraded. It wasn't just about sustainable transport anymore, it was about accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy as a whole, bringing solar power, battery storage, and transportation all under one roof. Let's jump into Part 4, Startup Success Secrets. While typical auto factory robots usually just do one single repetitive job, Tesla's approach is wildly different. Their manufacturing process is highly automated, using these massive 8 to 10 foot tall red robots. Each one has this multi-jointed arm and is actually programmed to perform up to 4 complex tasks: welding, riveting, bonding, and installing components. Picture this. You might have 8 of these huge robots working on a single car at a single station in a perfectly choreographed dance. And what does that mean for the bottom line? Extreme efficiency. These reprogrammable robotic teams can actually pump out up to 83 cars a day on a single assembly line. And because they're reprogrammable, they can easily switch to producing, say, the Model X on that exact same line. It gives Tesla a level of manufacturing flexibility and speed that the old-school auto giants really struggle to match. Another massive secret to their success: how they actually sell the cars. Musk completely bypassed the traditional margin-killing franchise dealership model and those giant ad budgets. Look, selling an electric vehicle is just more complicated. People have questions about electricity costs, service, resale value, and high-pressure car lots aren't exactly built for that kind of education. So Tesla opted to sell direct-to-consumer using internet sales and boutique stores in upscale shopping malls. High-touch service, zero pressure. And the craziest part? While competitors like Nissan dropped $25 million just to advertise the Leaf in 2012, Tesla has a tiny in-house marketing team of 7 people and spends exactly $0 on traditional ads. I think this quote from a Tesla spokesperson perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding their disruptive marketing. They basically said, right now, the stores are our advertising. We're very confident we can sell 20,000 plus cars a year without paid advertising. They just let the direct customer experience speak entirely for itself. Why spend millions on commercials when your mall locations and word of mouth are doing all the heavy lifting for free? Finally, Section 5, Future Competitive Hurdles. So to truly replace the internal combustion engine forever, what massive hurdle must Tesla still overcome? Because, it's one thing to build a really attractive, affordable EV with great tech. It is a completely different game to convince everyday consumers that they can safely leave gasoline behind for good. And that brings us to the ultimate psychological roadblock: range anxiety. The fear that a mass-market electric car just won't make it as far as a gas car with a full tank. Gas stations are on practically every corner in cities and every couple of miles on the highway. So Tesla's ultimate challenge is building a zero-emission charging infrastructure that is so unbelievably vast, drivers literally never worry about running out of power. They aren't just trying to outbuild other car companies anymore, they're trying to fundamentally rewire our global infrastructure to set a whole new automotive standard. It's an absolutely incredible strategic playbook, but it leaves us with one pretty big question. Can one single company actually pull off replacing the gas station?